The time she joined the Dallas TV series cast, she started dating Marco Garibaldi. They soon lived together and stayed together for 22 years, but never married. Soon after Lisa Marie moved out, Priscilla got pregnant, and she was not pressed like she had been before when she was pregnant with Lisa Marie. But she was concerned about how Lisa Marie would feel about it, but she was actually looking forward to being a big sister. Priscilla was preparing for the birth of the child, but also had informed the wardrobe mistress on the Dallas show so that the clothing should be adjusted, but everything was fine with that. They adjusted it and also adjusted the series that she was pregnant in it. She had a natural childbirth in 1987, and her son Navarone, named after the movie The Guns of Navarone, was born. And she could take him to the set and even nurse him in the dressing room. And her part on Dallas ended the next year, but she left on good terms with the Dallas cast. But now she had a son to raise. Lisa Marie married Danny Keough around this time also, and their wedding was very private in a Scientology center. Danny was her first love and her lasting love and was in her life for the rest of it. There were claims of Elvis having illegitimate children, also including one named Deborah Presley in 1988. She showed up to claim an inheritance and even came to the hospital when Lisa Marie was dying, claiming to be her sister. Not long after leaving the Dallas series, Priscilla was introduced to Leslie Nielsen and soon began working on the first Naked Gun movie. But she wasn't confident as far as being a comedian, and she didn't know Leslie at all when they first met, and he sat down and messed with her by sitting on a whoopee cushion and making a farting sound in front of her just to see how she would react. But they soon became real close friends and great working partners and wonderful chemistry they had during the filming. But she avoided O.J. Simpson as much as possible, relating the restaurant scene previously with Mike Edwards, said that O.J. was arrogant, hostile, and threatening on the set. A big part of this chapter is about Leslie Nielsen and her chemistry and how much she enjoyed working with him, how much she cared for him, and how funny he was. In one of the Naked Gun series movies, she was cast opposite Robert Goulet and was uncomfortable at first due to Elvis's story of shooting the TV out when he was on, and it was obvious what Elvis thought of him, but she believed that Elvis would have loved the Naked Gun series, but maybe not this one, and she wasn't sure if Elvis would have shot the TV out or not if he'd have seen it. Anna Nicole Smith was also in one of the movies and said that she had some strange behavior, but you can read all about that. This is the end of Chapter 8. Chapter 9 is Coming of Age. The 1990s were really good for Priscilla, professionally, psychologically, and financially, and she had her son also. Lisa Marie was married to Danny, and their daughter Riley was born on May 29, 1989. 3 years later, her grandson Benjamin was born. So between them, they had 3 beautiful children, and she was just wishing that Elvis could see them. Priscilla was a grandmother at 44, but she couldn't get into the grandmother part of her life at that age. She thought she was too young, or she didn't feel like a grandmother. She just pictured the normal older grandmother. She said Lisa Marie was good to her children and would get jealous of anyone trying to be close to them. And she created her own line of fragrance from a company in Germany, and she stayed busy as trustee for Graceland. 2 weeks after Lisa Marie's 25th birthday, they traveled to Memphis for the release of the first United States postal stamp of Elvis.
I'm very honored. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here to accept this for my father. It's a great acknowledgement, and I really appreciate it, and for him and my family and myself. Thank you.
It was released at 4 different set-up satellite post offices for the occasion, and the public had voted for this stamp from 2 different choices, and that was the only time in history that had happened. 500 million stamps were printed, and it was the best-selling commemorative stamp in history. It was unveiled at Graceland at midnight on January the 8th, 1993, which would have been Elvis's 58th birthday. And actually 300,000 stamps were sold that night in Memphis. Fans came from around the world, and even Jerry Lee Lewis came. 3 weeks later, on February the 1st, Lisa Marie got the transfer of her inheritance, and Priscilla was to be her mother only, not involved in the financial matters at all. But Priscilla was concerned that Lisa Marie would be vulnerable and an easy target to be ripped off, as she received a great deal of money, but says that Priscilla didn't know the amount. But this money helped Danny get more involved in music, but he was also around a lot of girls like Elvis, and Lisa Marie was concerned and jealous of that. Before, Danny had actually painted houses on the side to make extra money. So she wanted Danny to quit the band, and he eventually did. So Danny wasn't happy now, that he was just a man who was living with a wealthy wife. Lisa Marie wanted to be with a man who was more on her level now, and she divorced Danny in the spring of 1994. 3 weeks later, she married Michael Jackson. They had a private ceremony in the Dominican Republic. Priscilla was not invited, and she was appalled by the marriage. It was like Michael Jackson married her for publicity, more than anything else, the king of rock and roll and the king of pop. It also came at a time to cover up the child molestation charges that Michael Jackson had on him, and it was to show that he was heterosexual. Priscilla was never comfortable with the marriage, and Michael Jackson avoided her. This chapter is mostly about Michael Jackson. Priscilla said she only had 3 interactions with him during the entire marriage. He was never at home with Lisa Marie and he was gone for long periods of time, and he wanted to have a child with Lisa Marie. Priscilla told her that she needed to get her marriage together first, so Michael decided that he'd have a child with a lady named Debbie Rowe, since Lisa Marie wouldn't have his child. So the marriage just went downhill worse. Lisa Marie filed for divorce, and Priscilla said that Elvis probably even had a sigh of relief at the end of that marriage. And that's how the chapter ends. Chapter 10 is Memories. The chapter is mostly about her son, Navarone. Priscilla said she always took care of her children first and shared his first words that he said, and they also had a huge appetite and he'd eat anything, including vegetables. And when they traveled to other countries, he liked whatever food they had. He said he was real mature hanging out with adults, and when in school he tried to have an adult conversation with kids, and they thought he was odd, so the kids stayed away from him. And they actually hurt him by the things they did, and Priscilla resented that about the kids hurting her son. But he also didn't like school, but not as bad as Lisa Marie. But he was driven harder to pass the classes, and he was made to work harder so he would pass, and he actually thought that was good later, that he accepted that because he thought it was something that he believed that he really needed. He got a lot of unwanted attention, as a lot of the parents wanted to meet his mother, and some kids would use this to possibly meet her, and it caused problems, sometimes even fights. Said he was real good at picking up on foreign languages, especially Portuguese, and he got to practice that with his Brazilian family when they visited there. He was an independent child on a trip to Disneyland with Priscilla. He was only 4 or 5 years old, and she was in a souvenir shop with him, and he just left. He walked out, and she didn't know it, and discovered it, and she got in a panic. Said it was the most frightened she ever had been. He also liked to dress up in costumes and characters like a cowboy or Ninja Turtle, or portray characters in The Wizard of Oz or The Cowardly Lion there, and he loved Halloween, and Priscilla even went trick-or-treating with him, and no one recognized her in her costume. He liked sports, and she took him to his practices and games, and he even had karate lessons. And one thing she got to do, if it hadn't been for him, was rafting in the Grand Canyon. He liked bugs and insects, and then he graduated to lizards after that and had a lizard tank, and she describes him as a very kind child. Chapter 11 is Leaving Las Vegas and starts with Lisa Marie's interest in music now. She had sung in her room when she was 11 or 12, but would stop when someone came in. She was shy about it. By 18 or 19, she was singing better and learning how to play guitar and writing songs, and by age 20, she was getting better at it and gives Danny a lot of credit for that. In 2003, she recorded her first record album. It was about her life, and she wrote or co-wrote all the songs on it. Her first big concert was at the Rose Bowl with other acts, Sting's, Kiss, and Santana, and she was very nervous about this. This is also in 2003. But she did well. She thought she was confident by then. She recorded another 2 albums later and wrote or co-wrote all the songs but one, including Raven, which was written about Priscilla. She also was focused on raising her children. In 2001, she met Nicolas Cage, and they kind of fell for each other at first sight. But both of them, well, Nicolas was actually married. Lisa Marie was actually engaged at the time when they first met. But her and Nicholas both had tempers, and they'd break up and get back together and break up again. And then there's this repeat of the story about the 6-carat engagement ring ended up throwing in the ocean. It cost $65,000. And then he gave her a 10-carat ring 2 days later, and they were engaged all over. They married on August 10, 2002 in a private ceremony in Hawaii, and 3 months later, Nicholas filed for a divorce. In 2005, Lisa Marie was broke and only 12 years of receiving her inheritance and sold 85% of the rest of inheritance, including Graceland. That's what it says in the book here. She would retain the mansion and the grounds, Elvis's personal items, but she would no longer have control over his legacy. Joel Weinshanker was now the primary owner, and he had never actually met Elvis. The same year, Lisa Marie married Michael Lockwood, and he was the guitar player in Danny's band before. Danny was the best man at the wedding, and it was in Japan. About the time that Lisa Marie married Michael Lockwood, Priscilla split up with Navarone's father. She was 60 by then, reflected on how life had been, and how she had been trusting people too many times, and mistakes that she had made, and she reminisced about her and Elvis had talked about getting back together, but in a joking way, when he'd be 70 and she'd be 60, and they'd be riding the golf carts there at Graceland. October 7, 2008, Lisa Marie gave birth to the twin girls. She'd been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years, had several miscarriages, and she was 40 by now, and she had a cesarean section. Right after that, she became addicted to pain pills when she went home. And her and Michael Lockwood, her husband, decided to get away from everything, so they moved to England, bought a house there. And Priscilla and Navarone went there and ran into something haunted in a house that Lisa Marie rented before she bought the house. Lisa Marie kept writing songs while in England. She had enough material for a new record. She came to America to promote the record and thought that she could win a Grammy, but didn't even get a nomination. She was devastated and said that she'd never write music or play again. But she did record some duets later with Elvis. And she was also through with Scientology, and one song on the record is about this. And Priscilla also left Scientology.